Hey guys, Matt here. Today we're going to get into Ephesians 2, 25 through 33. Yesterday we looked at Ephesians 5, 22 through 24. And we looked at wives submitting to your husbands as to the Lord. Kind of broke that down, and we found that it wasn't really that difficult, and nor was it that complicated. It was just God's plan. And today we're going to shed more light on it, and we're going to come to a place, we're going to land this at a conclusion that some people, if you're not born again, you might be surprised at what marriage really is a picture of. We're going to look at that today. Verse 25, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Incidentally, when this was written in Ephesus, this was much more difficult than wives submit to your husbands. This was much more difficult because it was a man-dominated society. In fact, most societies in the world at that time, women were treated like property. That's not good, but that's how it was. So this would be more radical than that, than the wives submitting to your husbands. All right, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one has ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes it and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church. It's important. Verse 30, because we are members of his body, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to the wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is profound. Here's another mystery. We're going to get to this. This mystery is profound, and I am saying that it refers to Christ and the church. We'll come back to that. Verse 33, however, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. All right, so here we see a lofty command from God for the husband. Love your wife, but he doesn't stop there. Just like yesterday to the wives, he didn't just say, wives, submit to your husbands, period. No, he says, wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord. Same thing today. He knows that men will have a skewed view of love, right? He knows that the world has a skewed view of love. I mean, look at it today. You can almost, in some circles, in some areas, be arrested for preaching the truth, for saying that sin is sin. You know, it's called hate speech, which is the antithesis of hate. Warning people about impending doom is as loving as you can get. And yet, society today will say that a man marrying a man, that's loving, live and let live. And no. So God knows this. So he makes it easy on the husband. He says, I'm going to give you a description. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. So we see an example for the husband, a perfect example, as Jesus Christ was and is that perfect example. He loved us so much that he gave himself sacrificially for us, if you're in the church. But Jesus didn't just stop there. He didn't just give himself up. Verse 26, he cleansed the church by the water of his word. This is a snapshot of Ezekiel 36:25. I will sprinkle clean water on you, Ezekiel prophesied, and you shall be clean from all your uncleanness, and from all your idols I will cleanse you. The things of this world will become strangely dim. All those idols will go away when we're washed clean by the water. What's the water? Well, it's Jesus Christ. That's when we're born again. He sprinkles us clean, right? And then Ezekiel goes on to say he gives us a new heart, a heart of flesh in the place of our heart of stone. And that's what's going on. Jesus didn't just stop there. He sprinkled us clean with the water of his word, and he nourishes us. Verse 29, he nourishes and cherishes the church so that, what's the point? What's the point of washing the church clean and nourishing and cherishing her? So that he might present her to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. Why would Jesus want to present the church to himself? Well, some of you might already know this. This is a foreshadowing of Revelation 19:6-10, where we have the marriage supper, right? For those who don't know this, someday we are going to be presented as the bride of Christ, and that's what's going on here. That's why this is so powerful. In fact, Paul reveals this in verse 32 as a mystery. It's yet another mystery. He says, The mystery is profound, and I am saying that it refers to Christ and the church. See, in Revelation 19, 6 through 10, it says, "Let us rejoice and exult and give glory, for the marriage of the Lamb has come. It was granted to clothe herself with fine linen and bright and pure." So what's going on here is this picture of marriage is a picture of the marriage between Jesus Christ and his bride being the church, right? So that's why the role of husband and wife is so important. That's why the role, the office of marriage in and of itself is so important, because it's a foreshadowing of this marriage between Jesus Christ, the groom, and his bride, the church. It's so important, in fact, that Paul, in verse 31, takes us back to Genesis 2:24, and he says, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh." This is called a universal principle. We looked at this in 1 Timothy. Anytime a New Testament author goes back to the Old Testament, in this case Genesis, it means that in Genesis, when God created marriage, it was between a man and a woman. And in Ephesians, in Ephesus at the time, marriage is between a man and a woman. And today, in the year 2010, marriage is and always will be between a man and a woman. Even if some sinful liberal politicians get their way someday and change it, it will mean nothing to God. Nope. Marriage is always between a man and a woman. And men and women have different roles. In fact, if you look at verse 33, look at how Paul lands the plane here in verse 33. He says, "However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects the husband." Isn't it interesting? He doesn't say, "Guys, love each other." No. He says, "Husbands, love your wives. Wives, respect your husbands." It's almost like we're wired different, right? Of course we are. God made us different because men and women have different roles. Equal, Galatians 3:28, but different. And here's what he's saying here. He's saying, hey, wives, you're wired to want to be loved from God by your husbands. Husbands, you're wired to want to receive respect from your wives. You're wired that way from God, to receive respect from your wives. This is why a man and a woman must be in a marriage. It sounds rather obvious to say this, right? That and some physiological differences too, which we won't get into today. But this is clear that men and women are wired differently. And man, I tell you what, Satan would love to tear this down. We saw in Ephesians 2, Satan is the prince of the power of the air, and there is a course in this world, and we were once following the course of this world. What's the course of this world today towards marriage and the family? Man, this is evil to the course of this world. You talk about wanting to tear down men and women. Satan would love nothing more than to remove the difference between men and women. Satan would love nothing more for women to grow mustaches and men to be castrated, right? That's what he would love. Turn on a sitcom. Look at so many movies. Men are depicted as being bumbling, stumbling dunces, and women are depicted as running the house. That's the opposite. That's the antithesis of what God wants in a marriage, in a family. And why is it promoted? Why is it celebrated? Because that's what Satan wants. Does Satan have an in Hollywood? Absolutely, without a doubt. And that's what's going on here. That's why this is all so important to God. That's why God wants a wife to submit to her husband as to the Lord. And that's why God wants a husband to love his wife, just like Jesus loved the church and gave himself up for her. That's what's going on here. It's all a picture of something far larger, far more important, and we have to obey it. I wish I would have known that before I was married, before I was born again. But if you're in a marriage right now, or if you're soon to enter a marriage, that's what God says. That's the rules. Play by the rules and you'll be successful. All right, peace.